Hello everyone, today in this video, we are going to know about 4 common animation mistakes that you are probably making. After your huge response on this video, this is the part 2 of this video. Here I am animating some examples of it, and within the process of animating it, I'll explain you about these mistakes. So the first one is easing. To understand about easing, you need to first know that making frames far from each other, or adding much space between frames, makes the animation faster, and making frames closer to each other, or adding less space between frames, makes the animation slower. Now easing simply means utilizing both of these at right place. Let me show you how. Here I am animating a car moving from right to left. If I will add a lot of space between 2 frames just like this, it will make it go very fast, and its duration will also be very less, which doesn't look good at all. You can see it yourself. And if I make frames closer, and add less space between 2 frames, then surely its duration is increased, but animation goes really slow, and it still doesn't look nice. So, I'll have to animate by using both of these. Keep one more thing in mind that, whenever you need to show acceleration, start by making frames close to each other, and then gradually start adding space between them, as the subject go forward. Similarly, if you need to show deceleration or your subject is slowing down, or going to stop, gradually make frames closer to each other, till the subject comes to a position at rest. Eventually, it will look something like this. There can be many examples of it, some are these. The second one is squash and stretch. I have also talked about it before, that if your animation is looking stiff and hard, and you want to make it more smooth and fluid, then you need to add squash and stretch to your animation. Squash and stretch simply means exaggerating the shape and size of your subject. Whenever your subject is binding up, finishing up, or getting hit by a surface, you can squash or squeeze the character on those frames, and whenever the subject is speeding up, you can stretch the subject, then it will settle down to its normal position. Keep in mind that, whenever you use any one of them, you will have to use the second one as well to counter that. Like here, as this ball is falling down, it is stretched, and as it hits the ground it gets squeezed, then it bounces up again, and then comes to the position of rest. One more thing to be kept in mind, is to keep the volume of subject the same throughout the motion. Whenever the subject gets longer, it also gets thinner, and when it gets flatter, it also gets wider. Third one is secondary elements. Once you have mastered previous 2, and you have understood how to make a good looking animation, then you can make your animation more interesting, by adding some secondary elements to it. Dust, smoke, wave, small particles, water splash, can be some examples of secondary elements. These are just like cherry on the top of a cake. These are not the main thing that will describe your animation. If your base animation is not good, then adding these will not make any difference. Always make things like dust and water splash by straight ahead method, and remember that these will also follow an arc. Adding too much of extra elements can be really disturbing, so make sure that, do not let secondary action dominate your main action. Keep it in a limit, so that, it won't ruin your animation. Fourth and last one is rest frames, or pause. If your animation goes super fast, and everything runs very quickly, then this can be very useful for you. If animation goes very fast, then it becomes very difficult for viewer to understand it properly. It will be very disturbing, and hard for viewer to focus on one thing. In this type of case, first you should add some more drawings in between, to slow it down a bit. Then add easing to it, by changing the spacing between them. Then you can copy some rest frames, and hold it for seconds, so that viewer could get some time to process it properly. Now what do I mean by rest frame? Rest frame is that frame, when one action by the subject is finished, and character is at rest, or not doing any action. So whenever character has finished one action, hold it for some seconds, and then character will move on to the second action. Keep one more thing in mind, that when one action is being done, there should not be any other action going on in the sides, and the main action should be always in center of frame, or in 2/3 of frame. One more thing is that, as the animation starts to play, it should not start immediately. There should a delay of very few frames. But don't overdo it, or it will ruin your animation. I personally like to keep a gap of 12 frames between 2 main actions, and I always try to show one action at a time.